Morning, everyone. So, first question, how many people here have done or want to do work with the MENA region at some point? If you'll raise your hands for me, are interested in the MENA region in any capacity? Right? Okay. Well, I'm here to introduce you to the market and hopefully to convert some of you who are not seeing the MENA opportunity to understand why this market matters. And as Arda generously introduced me, I'm the founder and CEO of Arabnet. We organize some of the largest conferences for digital business and startups in the Middle East. We have annual events in Saudi Arabia, in the UAE, in Dubai, in Lebanon, and in Kuwait. And I'm going to be talking to you about the Middle East market opportunity. And I'm going to be covering four major areas: e-commerce, digital media, apps and games, and startups. And so let's start with e-commerce. How many people here are in the e-commerce space? How many people are working in e-commerce? Okay, good. Today, e-commerce is definitely by far the hottest opportunity in MENA. It's where a lot of the investors are putting their money. It's where the big ticket deals are going. And the market opportunity today for e-commerce is about $10 billion in the region. That's for e-commerce of goods. And beyond that, online transactions are about $40 billion worth across the region. If we look at where the market is concentrated in three main countries: Saudi Arabia, which is about 2 billion, UAE, which is about 2.5, almost 3 billion, and Egypt, which is a little bit less than $2 billion. And so those three markets together, they make up more than 50% of the e-commerce market in the Middle East region. If you're interested in doing business in that region, those are the three markets that you should look at. All this statistics that I'm going to talk about on e-commerce are actually based on the Payfort State of Payments report. It's one of the most comprehensive reports on e-commerce and payments in the Middle East. If you're interested, I definitely suggest you download and go through the full report. I'm going to be giving just a few excerpts. If we look at some of the top categories, Payfort surveyed their customers, and they saw that mobile phones, flight tickets, and clothes are the top three categories that people are buying online. Beyond that, they're paying their bills, watches, perfume, and home appliances. I guess that's probably quite similar to what's going on here in Turkey. One of the key challenges facing e-commerce in the Middle East today are payments and delivery. Unlike Turkey, where there's a very robust fulfillment and delivery system, where there's no cross-border, if you're an e-commerce player delivering within Turkey, the Middle East is very fragmented. Lots of orders, we have lots of customs, we have lots of challenges on that front. But one of the biggest challenges is actually cash on delivery. Over 50% of customers still expect or want to pay with cash on delivery. They prefer not to use their credit card. Only a quarter are happy to use their credit card online. So any e-commerce player addressing the Middle East must address the issue of cash on delivery. They must have cash on delivery as a service. And some of the startups that are in the region right now are starting to offer cash on delivery as a service for e-commerce players directly. So, beyond that, main reasons the Arabs shop online. Number one main reason is cost effectiveness. They want a cheaper solution. But number two and number three are about finding goods and services that are not available in the local market. If you want to the e-commerce consumer in the Middle East, first is cost effectiveness, make sure you're competitively priced, and second, make sure that you have service or goods that are not available in the local market. Some of the major e-commerce players in this space: Namshi and Jumia, both Rocket Internet Group companies; Excite, which is an electronics company, brick and mortar store that has now made a big push into the online space; and Souk.com. Souk is by far the oldest and largest. Today they are one of the MENA unicorns, a company's worth over $1 billion. And earlier this year, Souk raised $275 million to facilitate further growth. So Souk is definitely the big boy in town when it comes to e-commerce. Other spaces, new hot startup to look out for, Wadi.com. They raised $60 million. This would be Rocket Internet's third major venture in the Middle East region. And we're going to hear about Rocket Internet throughout this presentation because they're quite active in the region. Some smaller companies that are really interesting for you on your radar. The Luxury Closet, they sell second-hand luxury goods. They raised $8 million. And Fetcher. Fetcher is not an e-commerce player. It's actually a last-mile delivery service. And the reason why it's interesting is because, as we addressed, delivery is still a challenge for a lot of e-commerce players, which is what's making startup a very hot one in the markets today. In the services space, Careem is the company to look out for. It's the competitor to Uber in the Middle East region, the local grown competitor. They raised $60 million recently on a valuation that is rumored to be around $250 million. A lot of the region's top investors are invested in this company, so there's a lot of people with a stake in the broader success of Careem. Other platforms are real estate platforms. Both Property Finder and Buyut each raised $20 million in the last year. And these are players. Property Finder was valued at $200 million. So these are big players, and it's a hot space to look out for. Talabat.com is one of the most recent and largest acquisitions that took place in the region. It is a food delivery service. It was acquired for $170 million by Rocket Internet Group. Again, Rocket Internet making a big splash in the region. Service marketplaces to look out for coming up. Beyond food delivery today is restaurant reservations. Both of these companies have recently raised money, $4 million for Reserve Out, $2 million for Eat.com, space to look out for. Now finally, for those interested in e-commerce across the region, these are the big boys who are now investing in this space. How many people recognize at least one of them? Okay. Most people would likely recognize Fadi Handour, the guy on the left. He's the founder of Aramex, the founder of Wamda Capital, and one of the chief investors, or angel investors in Souk.com in the early days. Very successful track record of building and selling businesses himself, or building Aramex and investing in successful businesses that get sold. He just recently announced a new $500 million fund with a focus on e-commerce. The big boy, though, is really Mohammed Al-Abbar. On the right-hand side, Mohammed Al-Abbar is the chairman of Ecommerce, which is one of the largest real estate developers in emerging markets across the board. He is a chief advisor to Sheikh Mohammed, the Sheikh of Dubai, and he's just set up a $1 billion fund to invest in e-commerce. He also bought a stake in Yux Net-a-Porter for $150+ million. So he's really, really aggressively entering this space today. So if you're an e-commerce company looking to break into MENA, looking to raise money from MENA, these are the two guys, or two of the guys that you should talk to. Second space, digital media. Digital media is a $1 billion opportunity, $1 billion, roughly speaking, in online ad sales in the region. When we look at media consumption, we're talking about 500 million YouTube video views per day across MENA. MENA has one of the highest YouTube consumption per capita in the world. Rates are growing fast, 35% growth in online ad spend per year. And the hot space right now in media in the Middle East is certainly video. So the big players in the video space, these are 4 of the hot startups right now in video in the Middle East. These are creating local content, monetizing a lot of it through branded content, and a number of them have raised money recently. I mean, and most of these numbers that I'm giving you, investments, are in the last 12 to 18 months. So all the investments are very recent. So Kharabish, based out of Jordan, raised $5 million. U-Turn, based out of Saudi Arabia, raised $10 million. And Alfan Group also raised an amount that's been undisclosed, but showing the real interest in video right now. Beyond that, we're seeing global companies acquire Middle East startups in the media space. And again, in the last 18 months, we've seen the acquisition of Shahiyya.com, the region's leading website. And it was acquired by Cookpad, the Japanese publicly traded recipe website. And when I talk about this acquisition, I always like to talk about the size difference here to show the opportunity. Shahiyya was acquired for about $14 million. At the time of acquisition, Cookpad was valued at $1.4 billion, right? And that's the difference in size, and that's where the potential is for the growth of our markets and emerging markets more broadly. Another company that was acquired, Diwani. Diwani does, they have a number of media sites, A lot of them focused on women's interests, and they were acquired by a French company called Webedia that does similar work for a value ranged between $12 and $15 million. If we look at apps and games, the Arab market is hungry for apps. Arabnet did an app research report, and we looked at the app economy, how many apps people are downloading, what kind of apps are interesting to them, and we saw that over 40% of Arab smartphone users are downloading more than 5 apps a month. And there's a lot more information in that research about how much they're willing to pay and how they want to pay, but it shows really a demand for apps in the market. Same thing goes for gaming. The gaming market in the region is estimated at $1.6 billion by Booz & Co. And when we look at Saudi Arabia, that's the biggest market for gaming in the Middle East today, we can see some quite impressive statistics. 25% of the Saudi gamers are playing mobile games for more than 3 hours a day. And then we talk about how much they're paying. 13% are paying more than 500 Saudi riyals. And a Saudi riyal today is about equivalent to a Turkish lira. So we're talking about 500 Turkish liras per month. 13% of these gamers are paying. 4% paying more than 1,000 Turkish liras per month. And there's a large concentration of what the gaming industry calls whales in Saudi Arabia. Some hot gaming companies to look out for. Falafel Games raised $2.6 million just in the last 2 weeks. They're a company between China and Lebanon developing massively multiplayer games. And Lamba Labs, which develops mobile games, they developed a very huge hit success, Tribal Rivals. Tribal Rivals reached number 2 on the App Store in Saudi Arabia, was doing thousands of dollars of in-app purchases on a daily basis. And the last part of my talk is about startups. Arabnet recently did a research report on investing in technology startups in the Middle East. We went out to the investor community. We mapped the investor community first. Then we looked at the deals. We aggregated information about more than 450 transactions that took place in the region in the last 3 years. And so I'm going to show you some results from that research that we did. First, investors by year. So you can see when Arabnet started, when we started our business between 2009 and 2010, there were about 10 investors investing in technology in MENA. Today, there are over 100 institutional investors. This includes venture capital, angel networks, seed funds, accelerators, over 100 institutions investing in across the region. Where are they concentrated? About 25%, a quarter of them are based in the UAE, making the UAE today the largest concentration of venture capital dollars in the region. If you're hunting for money, go to Dubai. Second and third place come Saudi Arabia and Lebanon. But all of this is changing now as governments are getting much more involved in promoting and stimulating the startup ecosystem in the market. If you look at where the deals are taking place, about 140 out of the 450 deals in the last 3 years were in Dubai. And you can see it's the leader by far. We're talking about approximately 2 times the number of deals in the next set of countries. Jordan, Lebanon, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, all hovering between 60 and 70 deals. UAE at double that with 140 deals. And then more broadly, if you look at the broader picture, those 5 countries represent more than 50% of the entire deal flow. The deal flow is very concentrated in these top 5 markets. Now, I mentioned governments and startups. Today, across the Middle East, governments are looking to invest in diversifying their economies away from oil and natural resources and towards knowledge economy and digital innovation. We've seen a number of very large initiatives launched by Arab governments. 2 that I'll talk about here: the Kuwait National Fund for SME Development, $7 billion fund to do everything from training to capacity building to acceleration and investment. They've just really started actively working. They've commissioned Techstars to come in and do training programs for entrepreneurs. But something to watch out for, and something that's going to enrich the Kuwait ecosystem in the coming few years. And the Central Bank of Lebanon invested $400 million into the venture space in the country through a equity guarantee program. And through this program, which started 3 years ago, the amount of capital available for startups in Lebanon has multiplied times 10. We had about $25 million available before. Today, there's about $250 million available in liquidity for Lebanese startups. So don't forget, Lebanon is like just across the water from here. So an interesting opportunity and a lot of cash available for investment. But the big kahuna is really the new $100 billion fund that was launched just this week by SoftBank and the Public Investment Fund of Saudi Arabia. Public Investment Fund of Saudi Arabia putting in $45 billion. Saudi Arabia is making huge changes today to its economy. They are diversifying. They have a plan to take Aramco, the national oil company, public, set up the largest sovereign wealth fund in the world, a $2 trillion sovereign wealth fund, and through this become one of the largest technology investors in the world overnight. And this is not the only thing that they've done. In recent memory, if you've read the most recent funding round that Uber did, $3.5 billion was also led by the Saudi Public Investment Fund. And so Saudi Arabia is definitely a market to watch because a lot of things are going on there. They have a crown prince, deputy crown prince, who is 30, a millennial looking to really invest in technology. You can access a lot of this data on our research. Most of this data comes from original research that we've created at Arabnet. You can access it at intel.arabnet.me. We've published 4 reports so far. One on the mobile app economy. I mentioned one graph from that. Another on digital banking and mobile banking adoption. A third on investing in technology, which you've seen here. And a fourth, which just came out last week, which is about e-commerce best practices for MENA. I encourage you to download them. We have a lot more reports coming, some on smart government and other initiatives. And you can always reach me on email or on Twitter that you need from the Arab market. Let us be your #1 access point. Thank you very much.